So that is something that needs to change. Big concentration on courses, and then usually a student-teacher in experience, where an aspiring teacher goes into a classroom and spends a few weeks, or maybe in a really good program, several months, and that is the so-called clinical experience. My view is we need to flip-flop, reduce the coursework, and concentrate on the clinical experience as you do in a teaching hospital, where aspiring teachers in their first year are embedded in schools with successful teachers in the real world of the work. And that is the teacher residency model, which, interestingly enough, Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education, was starting as a CEO in the Chicago Public Schools, same time we started one in Boston. And we started with 15 teachers, and now it's up to 85. It's on hold because of budget problems. Hard to fill fields, math, science, special education. People can work with English language learners. A $10,000 forgivable loan if you worked for Boston for 3 years, completed the program successfully, and a 6-week boot camp with curriculum, Fridays and some nights during the week, curriculum, and 4 days a week with an accomplished teacher in a classroom for an entire school year. That's more of the teaching hospital kind of model. Retention rates now, because it's in its 6th year, rather than being 30–40% leaving, the retention rates for the residency teachers in Boston, 80–85% after 5 years. It's a huge, huge difference. That's a model of a human resource strategy that is expensive to start but will pay for itself over time, because you don't lose people as quickly and have to cover the cost of how to retain them. So the residency model for principals is the same. It's more expensive because the principal candidates are usually older, and you've got to help them with a salary of some kind while they're going through a similar program. Full-time for a year with an accomplished principal. That really makes a huge difference. Incentives and rewards. You're doing a lot in Austin with incentives and rewards. It's the right way to think about how do we measure effectiveness of teaching, of leadership, and shouldn't people be rewarded for the accomplishments they have and what they do. That's the right goal. I've lived on performance contracts. Not my whole career, but certainly in San Diego for 11 years and in Boston. I'm philosophically in favor of them. But we haven't got it right because we don't know how to do a one-size-fits-all effectiveness model that will lead to the fairness in terms of the results and what we pay. And the problem in the public sector, which I have experienced, is that 2 of my best years in San Diego and 2 of my best years in Boston, politically I couldn't take the bonus that I deserved because they were bad budget years. So that kind of says, well, good performance, but no rewards. So the right conversation to have, you're doing some breaking ground work on that. I encourage you to continue that and do it. Systems and structures. I can tell you as a superintendent that I often didn't get it fast enough. Principals will tell you that. Those of us in leadership positions at the district level and at the school level have to find ways to adjust the systems and structures to allow the collaboration to occur that we're talking about into supporting teachers and others with our human capital strategies. So, if you can do common planning time, we did it in Boston. Every teacher had common planning time every day. And then they controlled, because of the union contract, unfortunately only one day a week did the principal control it, but that could be used for getting teams together. I'm a big believer in teams. In most organizations, you get people to come together in teams to work toward a common goal. But we've got to change the structure of time and the allocation of it in schools to allow that teamwork to occur. So that is another example of an important human capital strategy. Who's going to select the teachers and the principals? There's a big debate about this, and there's not one size fits all. In some districts, still, people are assigned by central office. My own view is that there needs to be a move. If we're going to have principals as real leaders, they have got to have a major part in the selection of the staff, and the central office have got to provide the support, create the applicant pool, and be major players, but that is critical if principals are going to be held accountable for what they do. I haven't got time to talk much about unions, and you have a different situation here, and I don't want to sound about a complainer of unions, but when you're in a tough union state like Massachusetts, you don't have the flexibility to do a lot of the things that you do in some other states. But the best thing that happened to me is the year before I arrived in Boston, the legislature, controlled by Democrats, amazingly were able to get through with a big money package for a 10-year reform, pulling principals out of collective bargaining. And had it not been for that, I would not have been able to make as many of the changes that I made in the Boston Public Schools, because in the almost 11 years I was there, I was able to turn over about 85% of the principals, get them through leadership training programs and so on, and it made a huge difference. So at the end of the day, we've got to think differently about the context, how we're going to recruit and support our teachers of the future, how we're going to be willing to create leadership positions within schools so teachers can move to them, instructional leadership teams. It's one of the strategies in Boston, the collaborative coaching and learning, where a common planning time group would, with a coach facilitator, work on a 6-week cycle, and 6 teachers over 6 weeks would do a lesson in their school, observed by the other 5 teachers and the coach, debrief it, build on that experience, and as a team. But it requires a change in structures and systems to be able to schedule that and get it done. Or staff developers, rather than having individual teachers mentor with lots of room for moving around and not doing it in a systematic way, is to get staff developers who are really accomplished teachers and give them 12 or 14 teachers a year to work with full time. Another very important human strategy, human capital strategy for working at the core with new teachers, support, and getting them through those first couple of years with the hope of retaining them. So I hope you can see some of the connections here, the importance of this work. I don't have all the answers, didn't do it all right, but I can tell you that there is progress being made, and we're going to have to change our thinking about the culture in schools and the way in which we recruit, and our willingness to have different strategies for keeping people who are good for short term and creating incentives for people to stay and work their way into leadership roles as teachers or as principals or in the central office. Thank you very much.